everyone, I'm Matt Golinski. Welcome to the West Village Kitchen. We're going to be concentrating on some beautiful wintry recipes this month, and I thought it would be a really nice idea to show you how to make a quiche from scratch. And I'm not going to make the pastry, we don't have to go that far, but to have the knowledge to put together a quiche, the beautiful thing about them is that you can really put whatever fillings you like in there. So if you've got some pastry in the freezer and you've got some eggs, then whatever else you've got in the fridge can go in there. So whatever cheeses or anything. And the beauty of this is it can be dinner, or it can be morning tea, or it can be lunch, it can be a little snack. And it's really very, very easy when you know what you're doing. So I'm going to make a ham, leek and brie quiche today. But this could just as easily be a salmon, asparagus and parmesan quiche, or a blue cheese and pumpkin quiche, or whatever it is that you enjoy eating. So the first part is to get the pastry into the shell and get that blind baked first before we put all the eggs and the fillings in there. So I'll show you what I'm doing. Now, I'm using short crust pastry, and I've just pulled it out maybe at the most 10 minutes ago. You don't want it to be so defrosted that it's hard to work with. So you still want it to be nice and cold. And it's on a piece of plastic like that. So rather than trying to peel it off the plastic, put the pastry in first. So it's got something to kind of hold it all together. And then peel the plastic off afterwards. So give it a reasonably good overlap, and then we'll press it in nice and firmly so we don't have any dramas with egg floating all through the bottom of our oven. And then remove that bit of plastic. Now to cut this, just get your fingers and use the actual edge of the tart shell itself. And you can use it, if you've got a round quiche shell, just use that. It's exactly the same thing, same amounts, same recipe. Instead of wasting all these bits, if you overlap them all on top of each other, fold them over. So you don't want to overwork this pastry, otherwise you won't be able to use it again. But if you fold it onto itself, like this, back into a little bundle, what I do is I'll tend to just wrap that up, refreeze it, and when you want to make something else, you can just roll it out with a rolling pin by hand quite easily, rather than throwing it straight into the bin. So first of all, I'm just going to dock it. This is called docking. Just make little holes so that you don't end up with the air bubbles kind of raising up out of it. So once that's done, a piece of greaseproof paper or baking paper, and press it in really nice and firmly in there. So it's right up against the edges, pushing that pastry out. You can buy fancy blind baking beans and things like that from a cookware shop, but I just have a container of rice, just any rice, doesn't matter. It's just a weight thing, so dried beans, cannellini beans or things like that are fine, but I just reuse the same ones each time. I just have them in a container labelled blind baking rice and just reuse it each time. You're not wasting anything then. Make sure that it's really kind of pressing that pastry out though. The idea of it is that it's going to hold it in place while that bakes. Okay, so that just goes into the oven. It's going to take about 15 minutes to be baked almost all the way through. It doesn't have to be completely cooked, but enough that it's going to be almost there by the time we put our other ingredients. So while this cooks, I'll get the filling ready. I'm going to start by sweating the leek and some shallot. These are just they're like a little baby red onion, essentially. And they've got a really nice, sweet, mellow sort of flavour to them. So they're perfect in this. They're not going to overtake things. And I'm going to sweat them off in a little bit of butter. Okay, so the shallots are diced. The next part is the leek, and now this is a beautiful ingredient. It's got so much beautiful, amazing flavour. It's got sweetness to it, like an onion. Basically, you can use up to about the first 5 centimeters of the green part on there. These bits tend to be a little bit bitter as you get into the darker green part. And what tends to happen with leeks is they grow up through the soil and they collect dirt in amongst the leaves as they grow up. So what you need to do, I'm going to dice this finely as well, but before I do, just cut it down through, just getting into the white part of the leek, and then get close to a tap and just open it out a little bit and make sure there's no dirt in there. There's no point making this beautiful quiche and then having your first bite and it's full of grit. So make sure it's washed really, really well. And then to dice this, that cut that you've already made, cut the leek in half that way, and then into strips. And if you wanted to, you could just slice this straight across into circles. It doesn't have to be in dice, it's only because I'm dicing the shallot as well. And now I'm going to sweat this in butter, so on a kind of a medium to low pan. The term sweating something means that you're kind of cooking it without colouring. So we don't want it to be caramelised, we don't want it to be brown at all. Just cook down enough so that it's lovely and soft. Okay, so while I wait for the leeks and the shallots to sweat in butter and the pastries in the oven, I've got some beautiful shredded smoked ham here. Now, the egg filling for this, it's really just about having enough egg mix in there to bind all the ingredients. And the more cream and the more yolks you put in there, the more decadent it is. So you can just use whole eggs and a little bit of cream, or in this case, what I'm going to do is use 1 whole egg, but I'm going to put 4 yolks in there. And about 300 mils of cream I find is enough to fill, just to fill. So really when you're making a quiche like this, it's important that you kind of, for me, I like to put as much filling in there as I can get away with. So you don't want it all pouring over the edges, but also you don't want it to be an empty shell with just a few little bits of ingredients in there. So I like to try and squeeze as much in it as I can. About 300 mils of cream and 1 whole egg, 4 yolks is a really nice decadent quiche. So mix those together, just whisk them together. I'm going to add a little bit of nutmeg, just a tiny bit. Nutmeg is really strong, so you be very careful how much you use of it. But we'll get that bit ready. And then the only other thing really to get ready now is the brie. So I've got some lovely King Island brie here. And I'm going to use this to actually decorate. I've got some fresh thyme. So once all the ingredients are in there and the egg's on, I'm going to slice this into slices and lay it across the quiche so you get that pattern forming of the brie on top. So you can actually really see it in there. Just cut the end off. All right, so that pastry shell should be just sort of half cooked enough. You can see that it's still got a little way to go, but it's cooked enough that it's going to hold its shape now. It's not going to cave in on us. That can just go back into the container. Now it's just a matter of putting all the fillings in there. I've got the leek and shallot mix. That can go in first. Scatter that all in the bottom. And then some of that smoked ham. And like I say, this could be bacon, this could be salmon or chicken or whatever it is that you like to eat. There's no rules. Next I've got the egg and cream mix. I'm just going to season it now. A little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper in there. And it's easier, I find, if you kind of transfer it to a jug so you can aim it, pour it in the spots where you want it to go, and just be careful that it's not going to overflow the actual pastry. So you can see that that's just a good amount of the egg mix, just enough to fill that up. And then just to kind of create a bit of a pattern on here, just on a slight, ever so slight angle, I'm just going to put those bits of brie up across the top, and they'll go really lovely. They'll sort of melt over the top and go really lovely, gooey, golden brown color as the quiche cooks. Now I've baked the pastry shell at 180 degrees, but now we really want to turn this down. This is eggs, and we don't want them to turn into whatever, scrambled eggs. So, and everything in there is cooked. The pastry's cooked, the leeks are cooked, the ham's cooked, the cheese is going to melt. So really, it's important that we don't give it too much heat. All we're doing now is setting the eggs. So I'll turn it down to 160, 150, 160 maximum, and then just cook it really gently so that there's not too much heat there. So nice pattern on top with the cheese. And then just the last thing to go on there, I've got some lovely fresh thyme. That's going to go beautifully with leeks and ham and cheese. Very French style combo, this one. And this is going to take around about 20 minutes at 150 degrees. All right, so there's that beautiful quiche. It's best if you let it cool down a little bit first, but I'm very impatient, so I'm just going to pop it straight out. And there we have it. One Leek smoked ham and brie quiche. And it's just set, and that's exactly what you want. You just want the eggs to be just set, not too firm. And it's wonderful if you just let this sit until it's just sort of around room temperature. It's the perfect lunch dish, perfect brunch dish. In fact, it's perfect for any time of the day. So I hope you get the chance to make it at home. Thanks for watching and enjoy.